There's nothing more important than addressing what constitutes universal human goodness. Everybody can't be right, but that doesn't mean nobody is right. Those who always look for the exception in order to discount the rule banish themselves unnecessarily into relativistic nothingness. I spent my life trying to do my best to understand what the core of ethics is and why what is good is thought of as good. In those studies, I first studied all the major religions by studying their holy books. It really didn't do much to help me understand what was good and why it's good. What really helped me understand the core of goodness and the foundation of ethics was the study of heroes and villains. Understanding why one character is a hero and another a villain gives insight through the evaluation of their deeds. We can understand what values people rally behind consistently through history. The answer is the same again and again. The people's heroes save them from suffering and give them opportunities. In my study of religion, I was fascinated by Buddhism. It seemed to be the only way of life that offered a simple seed to grow within a person. Attachment to life is suffering, cessation of attachment is cessation of suffering. This leads to a sort of healthy, balanced nihilism that brings some amount of peace to those who might need it. I was always amazed at the simplicity and functionality. It doesn't require the person's devotion. They haven't got to be loyal to anything at this level. It's just existential medicine, an existential tool to relieve anxiety. I knew that I wanted a similar seeding type of effect from a planned formulaic view of humanism, something that could be easily understood and easily remembered, something that wouldn't take years of study to understand but would be functionally significant. In this video, I'll cover understanding universal humanism, the three-apple problem, universality and particularity, the problem of ethnocentrism, the paradox of tolerance, and universality and exclusivity. Human universality is persistent and perceivable. The emergence of empathy and fairness is natural from this deterministic evolution. Humans all have the same basic needs, and we have to provide them for ourselves in a limited system. Universal human needs are food, air, and water, shelter, healthcare, education. Every human on Earth has these same needs. Every human on Earth faces the same ends without them, suffering and death. This is a formulaic representation of humanism based on a Buddhist-style seed that promotes individual growth, rather than caging a person in arbitrary contextual details that have to be interpreted. A. Provide for yourself. B. Do not prevent another from providing for themselves. C. Help the less fortunate. A and B represent individual necessity and individual ideology. Find ways to provide for yourself while causing as little negative impact to the people around you, cleansing the means of your survival. C represents an ideology for the individual and the group. If we can't realistically have everything for everybody, the next level down is the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. We know some people will be left out, so we develop mitigation strategies to ensure the rights and privileges of marginalized groups are preserved. The three-apple problem is just a simple way to look at the world and what is happening to help us reduce existential dread when faced with the push and pull of ethics in everyday life. The apple represents a need that cannot be split and is insufficient to meet the need of more than one agent. For instance, a limited water source, a limited food source, a limited oxygen source, a limited medicine source, or land. Conflict. So when you have an indivisible unit of need, but you have two agents that cannot survive without it, you have conflict by the very nature of reality and survival. The agents can fight to the death, or one agent can concede to the other, giving up their life, but the situation and the outcomes are determined, not relativistic. Fairness. Fairness is the minimum outcome needed. Everybody at a minimum has at least what they need to survive. This is basic human rights, and if any state expects to have a name as a state, it has to meet the basic human needs of its citizens with no qualification. The third state of three apples represents a combination of a limited conflict where an agent's life is not in any danger from deprivation of need, but they are participating in a system where there's a discussion about the quality of life and how to redistribute power and wealth. Universality and particularity are essential concepts in understanding the dynamics of culture. Universality refers to shared elements that transcend cultural boundaries, embodying commonalities among diverse societies. These shared aspects often include fundamental human rights, basic moral principles, and universal needs. Recognizing universality underscores how humanity is connected, emphasizing the common threads that bind people across different cultural landscapes. On the other hand, particularity refers to the unique and distinctive features within a specific culture that sets it apart from others. These features can encompass language, religious practices, customs, and art forms that contribute to the distinct identity of a cultural group. Ethnocentrism refers to the tendency of individuals to evaluate and judge other cultures based on the standards and values of their own cultural group, often considering their own cultural group as superior. This mindset can lead to several problems and challenges. Stereotyping. Ethnocentrism often contributes to the creation and perpetuation of stereotypes. People may generalize characteristics or behaviors of a few individuals to an entire cultural group, oversimplifying and distorting the diversity within the group. Interpersonal conflict. Ethnocentrism can fuel interpersonal conflicts and tensions between individuals from different cultural backgrounds. It may lead to feelings of superiority or inferiority, hindering effective communication and collaboration. Lack of cultural empathy. Ethnocentrism often reflects a lack of cultural empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings and perspectives of people from different cultures. Addressing ethnocentrism requires cultivating cultural awareness, promoting cross-cultural education, and encouraging individuals to approach other cultures with an open mind. But it's also important to understand when ethnocentrism prevents the progress of human universality. We cannot allow cultural relativism to lead us down a path of falling victim to the paradox of tolerance. The paradox of tolerance is a concept that originated with philosopher Karl Popper. It addresses the question of how a tolerant society should respond to intolerance. The paradox is framed as follows. A tolerant society should be tolerant by default, but it should not tolerate intolerance to the extent that the intolerant ideologies or individuals undermine the very tolerance that allows them to exist. In other words, the paradox emerges when a society committed to tolerance faces the challenge of how to deal with ideologies or individuals who, if given free rein, would seek to undermine that very tolerance. Popper argued that if a society embraces unlimited tolerance and allows intolerant ideologies to spread without restriction, the intolerant will use this freedom to promote their views, potentially leading to the erosion or destruction of the tolerant society. Thus, a paradox arises. In order to preserve tolerance, the society must be intolerant of those who seek to exploit tolerance to propagate intolerant ideologies. The challenge becomes determining when and how a society should draw the line between tolerating diverse viewpoints and preventing the spread of ideologies that, if unchecked, could threaten the very foundations of tolerance and inclusion. Understanding and acting in a way that is productive and furthers humanity's universal goals is something that must be consciously supported by individuals and subgroups. But when individuals and subgroups attempt to subvert universal humanism, humanity has to stand against those individuals and groups in reaction with the same power and force that those groups are using to attempt to subvert universal humanism. How universality can be exclusive and avoid the paradox of tolerance. Universality is not ethnocentric because it doesn't belong to any one subgroup of people, but is the identity of all people. The challenge lies in ensuring that universal principles, values, or rights are recognized and articulated in a way that respects and incorporates the diversity of cultural perspectives without self-annihilating into cultural relativism or succumbing to the paradox of tolerance. Here are some ways in which universality can avoid being exclusive or ethnocentric. Cultural sensitivity. Acknowledge and respect cultural diversity. A universal principle should be expressed in a way that recognizes the various cultural contexts and doesn't dismiss or undermine cultural variations, as long as true universal humanism is maintained within them. Inclusive dialogue. Engage in inclusive dialogue that allows for the input of diverse voices. Instead of imposing universal principles from a single perspective, involve representatives from different cultural backgrounds in the process of defining and articulating universal values. This ensures a more comprehensive and culturally sensitive approach. But also understand that universality is not subjective in essence, but subjectively perceived. There is not multiple views of universality, but multiple expressions of it. Human rights framework. Many universal principles are often expressed within the framework of human rights. An approach grounded in human rights emphasizes the inherent dignity and worth of all individuals, irrespective of their cultural backgrounds. Human rights frameworks are designed to be inclusive and respect cultural diversity. Intersectionality. Recognize and consider intersectionality, which acknowledges that individuals belong to multiple social groups simultaneously: race, gender, religion. An intersectional approach ensures that universal principles are applied with an awareness of the intersecting factors that shape individuals' experiences. Cross-cultural education. Promote cross-cultural education to enhance understanding and appreciation of different cultures. Education plays a crucial role in dispelling stereotypes, reducing prejudice, and fostering a more inclusive interpretation of universal values. Adaptability. Understand that the application of universal principles may need to be adaptable to different cultural contexts. There may be various ways of expressing and implementing these principles that align with the values and traditions of different communities. We do have to be careful not to slip into cultural relativism. We always have to affirm human universality, and part of that is being critical of cultural norms that create division and separation between different groups that are unnecessary and unproductive. So universal humanism's goal is just to make agents aware and build upon the reality of a deterministic universality and the truth that is the foundation of ethical emergence. Understanding why ethics is not relative but relational, and how it changes when the situation changes, is essential to getting closer to being the truly good human beings that we can be. The goal is to preserve a universal culture that promotes positive inclusivity, as well as a deep understanding of the paradox of tolerance. That means promotion of preventive measures to ensure that passive universal inclusion is protected in reaction at the level and to the same extent that it is being eroded away or attacked by those who lead with particularity. Inclusivity is important, but also education and productive social norms that support universality have to be maintained. That means there's a responsibility to educate as well as dissuade unproductive behavior. Advocating for universality as a cultural norm is not the same as advocating for a culture simply because you are from that culture. Cultures often develop under moderately isolated conditions, and they sometimes aren't exposed to enough difference to create the universal perspective needed to moderate more extreme views. Cultures that develop in more diverse environments have more opportunity to cleanse unproductive deviations that develop in more isolated conditions. These developments tend toward inclusivity, focus on universality, and moderation out of necessity. In order to avoid conflicts, people need to mentally bridge gaps to function in diverse environments. That's all I'm attempting to do with this humanistic format. Put out there a simplistic, memorable seed to create at least some basic agreement about what universality is built on, so maybe we can gain traction and stop hiding in a relativistic abyss. I'll talk about this concept all day, so you guys go ahead and comment and keep the comments light. You know, we're talking about building something, not tearing something down.